Hey guys, good afternoon. I don't know how to say that in Macedonian. Dobre utro is good morning. Good afternoon is. See, now you're not so quiet. Okay, my name is Anastas Michos, and I'm not used to doing this, so it is what it is at this point. I'll try and make this brief because I get tired of my own voice and coffee. So I was invited here to be a judge in the student presentation. And in the course of going back and forth with the festival organizers, it was like, can you do a workshop? And it's like, I don't know what. Everybody's, you got some big names here. And I thought to myself, the most common thing I'm always asked is, you have all this money. You can do all these things with all this money. And we can't. What's the answer? And there really isn't an answer. I believe that the creative mind is sparked by limitations. That in no matter, I've worked on $150 million shows, I've worked on $100,000 shows. And in all of them, there are limitations. It's because for the most part, when you see a big budget film, it's not the camera department and lighting and grip that's getting the money. Literally in the United States, 60% is above the line and 40% below. Above the line in the United States means that it's director, producers, and actors and talent, and score, and script. So if you see a $100 million movie, pretty much 60% of that, 60 million bucks, is spent on those guys. And then below the line is what we get. And of course, that's divided up into production design, which tends to be the biggest, most expensive department by nature, particularly if it's a period piece. Crew costs, if it's big. And then after that, it's construction costs. And then very far in the end, there's a line item that says DP. It can be this big. And then after that is camera. And cameras are rented and whatnot. But just because it's a big movie doesn't mean that we have to do things complicated, or you need a lot of equipment, or you must have the latest technology, or I can't do that because they had the brand new, Sky Panel X, which looks very cool. But yes, Lord knows it's going to be expensive to rent, and all the other things like the Sky Panels are. They're not cheap. So I thought I'd bring out one of my favorite tools, and it's a tool that I learned from a dear colleague of mine and dearest friend, and Jean-Marie is in the audience, and he sees this over here, and I'm sure he knows exactly what that is, which is the Chinese lantern. It is a lantern. It's very simple. It's portable. You can get them anywhere. I went to the store here, at the electrical store, and I bought a bit of cable and a light bulb and some masking tape. And I made this last night, which I think I did a very good job painting. This lantern has been used to light some of the most amazing films in the last 20 years. And when I say amazing, everything from Palme d'Or to the Golden Bear to the BAFTAs to the Academy Award winning productions. Before I was a DP, I worked on all sorts of things as a camera operator. So I got to see these used a lot. We shot all of Interview with a Vampire. Pretty much every shot was lit with one of these. Pretty much Mary Riley. River Runs Through It. So what I'm trying to get at to everybody here, and obviously the far more experienced DPs know this already, is that it's not so much what equipment you have, it's where you place it and what you do with what you have available. 2 days ago, we were on a panel together with Larry and Seamus, and one of the things we talked about is looking at what's free. Like, what's given to me, and then what do I do with that scenario? So the first thing I do when I scout a place, and it was like Larry was saying, and I was going, is that I go look at a place and say, what's free? What is it that I have here? At what time of day do I have it? The only time I like lighting is if I'm stuck in a scenario where I'm going to go from day to night, and it has to be consistent, or we're in a place that, for whatever reason, production design, cost, money, director, likes that particular space versus another space. And then I have to figure out how to make the choices to light that. And sometimes that's big. I mean, my biggest lighting setup has literally been 20 135-foot condors, right? It's big, big. The difference between big and small, though, is once you know where the first light's got to go, then everything follows. See, big doesn't necessarily mean complicated. Big just happens to mean you have a big space. So part of my process and the champagne taste with a beer budget is to, God, I grew up, my mother told me I had that way back when I was a kid, when I was asking for something. And I was told I had champagne taste with a beer budget. So I went out and got a better job. So part of the process is to decide what can you do and what can you do for free, particularly on a small budget. And on a small budget, production designers and directors and producers rely on you to do that. Because it's really no good in saying, I need, because they don't gotta. You know, they just literally don't have it. So part of the process is trying to sort of figure that one out. So the first thing, in the Chinese lantern world, normally I have these things on dimmers, but I didn't have it. I have a dimmer here, but I didn't have a screwdriver, so I didn't put it together. All right. That is a Chinese lantern. This is only it's a 24-inch one. The ones that I used to use, and Philippe used to use, and Jean-Marie used to use, normally were like 19 inches, slightly smaller than this. And they're a wonderful light because they come in a package like this, and you assemble them. One of the things that we found out what to do with them is to have some of them that are totally round and translucent, and some of them are opaque. And we all know why a light is soft. A light's soft, obviously, not because it has diffusion in front of it, is because the diffusion makes the size of the source. So, the first thing is how do you get a light bigger? And way back when, working with Haskell Wexler, Sven Nykvist, and all those guys, it was all about bounces and crony cones. Jordan Cronenweth used to put these little, you know what a chimera is? A chimera came from Jordan Cronenweth's crony cones, which was a triangle box made out of cardboard that was painted black that had diffusion in it. And it slipped on in front of a 1K Fresnel. And he used to have them everywhere in different sizes. So the evolution of what lighting comes from is, it also comes from people, creative people, DPs and gaffers, key grips, who are missing something and trying to figure out how to make it work with the things at hand. So the reason I like this light is, can we kill the house lights for me? Can we turn off the lights, please? Sorry if I'm speaking in the vernacular. But instantly, 3, 2, 1. Isn't that pretty? Right, it's pretty because of a couple reasons. One of them, it's pretty because if I come further back, or I move the light further forward, right, it's a traditional, this is not normally I put these things on C-stands, but we had a mic stand, so we use that instead. And rather than me raising the light, I'll lower myself. So, this is your kind of like normal 3/4 frontal blah, blah, blah. But the nice thing about a spherical surface, and you use it to your advantage, is that it also, when you stand up, becomes a little bit of the bottom light, and then it instantly becomes an edge light. Like just when you're lighting an actor, and you have another light coming in this way. The other thing about them is, we can turn on the house lights again. The other thing about them is they're small lights of small intensity, so the fall off is little. so you're not fighting your background. Or if you need to fill the background, you don't make it black on the back. So you can put a little edge light behind somebody and edge them. And meanwhile, the background, if it's spherical, like that white one, then the background wall becomes falling off and just fills up nicely without an additional light. The advent, and these lights came from a wonderful still photographer by the name of Sarah Moon. Philippe Rousselot, who's, I'm sure you know who he is, used to be Sarah Moon's assistant in the still world. And Sarah has this, I mean, you should look her up, phenomenal body of work. And he transposed these lights to use when he started shooting. And his work, for example, I mean, in Go, Mary Riley, I mean, I could just name a million of them. His portraiture work with a Chinese lantern is unparalleled, totally, and particularly of the period. It's just beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. Anyway, that's the Chinese lantern, and I'm going to use it because I don't like that light, and I'm trying to keep the screen dark. So what I want to do, and I'm going to make this very short and sweet, well, short, you'll decide if it's sweet, presentation. What I did is I chose a bunch of clips from a bunch of different movies, which I lit with either available light in a bounce card or 2 Asteras or 1 Chinese lantern. And I'm just going to show a bunch of things like a clip, and then we can talk about it, and I'll show you another clip, and then when we get bored, we can do something else. Okay, can we kill the house lights again, please? Oh, also, I'm going to make the excuse that none of the people here presenting, particularly the students, don't get to do this. The projector is out of whack. That I know for a fact. So you must excuse the black levels and the highlights, and it's a little bit plus red, etc., etc. So this is a little movie I did with Naomi Watts, and the whole thing on this thing is literally available light. One of the choices I make when I have to go that way is I always choose a lens that has character. In this particular case, it's an old set of vintage, Panavision vintage, both C-series anamorphic and spherical. Those little twinkle lights, and we were talking yesterday about twinkle lights in the kit, or 2 days ago, is something I always carry just because by using the nature of a lens and understanding its capabilities, you can give it an ethereal quality. So another one of my favorite lenses is this one, which is a 360 anamorphic, which is a 2.8 lens. But I just love the way it flares. And on this shot, it was just a little card, and I twisted the mirror to have a highlight. This nightclub is totally lit with practicals. The only thing I put up was that one little column over there, which had 2 Asteras in it. And the reason I did it is because I wanted a light change for this particular moment. Actually, in reality, you can actually see the detail in the background. Here, I have to say, the blacks got very crushed on this. This is a practical light. Everything in here is practical. And this is also all practical with a bounce card. And part of what makes this shot work is a 60 mil anamorphic, very close focus. I think the focus on that was 19 inches. Okay, can we hit the house again? Because by turning off this light, I have no idea how to turn it on again. Can we hit the house light, please? Okay. Real quick, anybody had any questions about those things? Boring, interesting, yes. I do that often. Yeah, I do that often. I mix lenses. I'm the audience. Okay, so I don't believe in a dogma to a style or to a film. If a film requires you mixing something, then that's what it does. I think that we react to an image. We don't react to the technical part of an image. We react is, does that image give me the same emotional quality as the image before or the image afterwards? And once I approach the work that way, then I get to use all the tools in the toolbox as opposed to just the one tool. So it's somewhat like if you're a musician and you're composing a piece, do you limit yourself to an octave? No. Do you limit yourself to a scale? No. You can switch, and often it's the switch that makes it interesting. Like even if you think of jazz or something, you know, it's the contrapuntal idea. So the fact that a lens has a round bokeh versus an oval bokeh, or flares in a certain way versus another way, does not take away from the narrative. And the narrative is the emotional narrative. So yeah, I do it all the time. Yes, it does, absolutely. And it's far easier to do today because, you know, we just put the little button on the camera. Back in the film days, it was a matte. It was really easy, you know. Some of it was just Super 35 blown up, and the other one was anamorphic full frame. And, you know, there's a conformant, and they do the work. So it's, you know, it's not my job to make somebody else's job easier. It's my job to make the audience react to what the director and I discussed what the image was going to be. So when I say somebody else, I mean further down the process, particularly. Obviously, we make editors' jobs easy. We make production designers' jobs. We're all collaborative. But when it comes to what is the emotional intent, I just throw that all away, including, like we all do it, I'm sure, you know, screen grammar. You know, like everybody's like, oh my God, you're on the other side of the line. Do we know who she's talking to? Yes, then who cares? You know, we know she's talking to that guy. You know? Yeah, anything else? Yes?
What we saw, practicals, film versus digital?
That was a digital. So, but I go back and forth. I don't believe that there's a budgetary restriction. I believe that shooting digital still, although it allows me to experiment more, because I have a confidence of sleeping that night, which is, oh yeah, because we all as DPs like to ride the line. You know, I mean, we're right on the edge often of exposure, of detail, and everything else. And you need to have a certain confidence in film to be able to do that. There's no question about it. And Lord knows, as Larry was saying, as everybody here who's ever shot film knows, of going to the lab in the morning. But the difference I find is really interesting is that with film and having grown up on film, I start with a mental image of what it's supposed to be. And whether or not that image is shot deck, magazine articles, previous films, it only exists in here. And it only exists in here until the next day. So there's something about the latency, the time it takes to look at it, that allows you to create differently. Like I've asked editors about cutting on film and cutting on Avid. The difference is cutting on film is slower, but it's far more deliberate. There's a lot more thought to it, because if you keep on cutting on film and taking a frame off and a frame off and a frame off, and then you want to put it back on, at a certain point all you have is tape, right? And so you really have to think about what you're doing. That's what I find the big difference between shooting film and shooting digitally, is when I approach a set on film, I'm far more active, not only just subconsciously, emotionally, but also just plain intellectually. Like, what am I doing? Want to watch some more stuff? Because I got tired of talking. No, no, not at all. Really. Yep. We'll watch another clip here. I'm afraid that the lights are going to go on and off. Only because I don't know how to get this plug here. Or maybe I'll leave it on. Wait. Oh, darn. Wait. See, I knew I should have had a dimmer on this thing. Wait. Okay. We'll try this. Just do it this way. Oh, it's not too bad on the spill, is it? Nah. You guys won't care. You don't care. We don't care too much on that. Oh, there we go. Is that better? Yes? Okay. And I'll stand in front of this thing so it's not blocking you. Okay, here we go. Okay. Go button. This is a small little movie I did. I don't know why there's any sound, but again, available light. Part of it is just making the choices of where the camera is and using literally photography. That's the part we forget about cinematography, that actually the word photography is in there to create emotional responses. This particular film, I ended up shooting only on 2 lenses, a 29 vintage and a 50 vintage Panavision. And the last shot of this particular sequence is a favorite because it's a day exterior, high noon, and I shot it with a 50 mil wide open at a T1. That one. And I covered him with a piece of black, and that in the background is a mirror. So there's a sensibility of knowing. Again, I liken what we do much to music. Oh, we can turn those off. I'll just talk in front of that. So you're not turning them back on again. Otherwise, you'll get tired of doing that. I liken to knowing what we do, and I'm talking again to a younger generation here, is to understand that we have to know our instrument as well as a virtuoso, pianist or guitarist or anything knows theirs. That's what allows us to have champagne tastes with no money. Because once you know exactly what that thing can do, then you can manipulate it without having extras. So often, it's getting to the soloist in photography and not having to worry about the accompanying orchestra. Because we could do that same thing with, overhead butterflies and light it and do it and complicated shots. But we also can get an emotional response by just simply understanding what our tool is, This one here, but nobody had any questions, right, about that clip? Anybody know about the 50 mil T1? Has anybody used a 50 mil T1? Yeah. It's great, right? It's great at T1. It's amazing. It's amazing to embrace the imperfections of lenses. It's amazing to embrace the chaos and imperfection of the world in art. Because we also strive to go, how do we make it perfect? How do we create an artificial world? But most of the stuff that humans respond to is a chaotic world. Because basically, I know I'm not talking about budget and money here, but basically I'm talking philosophy a little bit about how do humans respond to nature? And that's all chaos, That's what makes us go, oh my God, it's a rainbow. Oh my God, look at the way that cloud is today. So I highly recommend playing with things outside of the norm of what they're designed for, because that's how the T1 is really designed by Kubrick for Barry Lyndon, and it was designed for candlelight use. It wasn't designed for day exterior, wide open, with a stack of lens filters in front of it, but it gives it an amazing effect. All right, so this one, we can kill that light. Nice, nice. I forget what this clip is. Oh yeah, this clip might be, it should be rolling. It's not rolling. Oh, there it is. This is a movie, we had a lot of dough on this movie. And this corridor is all natural light. And I was really annoyed that I couldn't turn off that light because I didn't have time. The Chinese lantern lighting Sam as he walks up. Inside, this now here is production design. It's actually much softer. Yeah, it's actually much softer if you actually had the contrast here. But I just lit this with a couple shiny boards and some diffusion. And just let film be what film does. Also on this one here, Sam is really, really very helpful to camera, as imposing as he looks. And you can see I have Julianne Moore flat lit, and I asked Sam to just rock it, so he took the light away. And you know, and it's really works very wonderfully and naturally. The production designer helped with those walls. This is a movie that we shot in a jail, and all I used was a flag. Again, this is way too crunchy. So obviously you can read into the blacks. I didn't want to see him in the corner, so I had like a little flag on there, handheld, so then when he leaned forward, he got a little bit of glint of light. A part of shooting with no money is in a real situation where you're not allowed to bring lights in, is literally figuring out how do I get a guy to hold a flag in the right spot, you know? Again, this is way too crunchy. I don't know why it looks this crunchy, but it is, so there you go. But we could have lit that, and I never would have gotten it as well. I can't imagine anybody has any questions on that one. No? Yeah, no, no, no. Good. Also with music, this is a really simple scene to light, because we had no time. We had some money, but no time. The director wanted some sort of opening and a light cue, and I was like, can't do that, don't have the time. So I just did an out of focus cue, which kind of works as her coming forward. I'd like you to just point out a couple things. One of them, she's lit by light bulbs, just like those light bulbs, and a Chinese lantern off camera, and one right on top of the lens. He's lit with a Chinese lantern. That light on the table literally is the light that you use on porches, because the production designer didn't give me any lights. And hang on. You should look at it on the computer. It looks much better. Really looks better. But okay. So, bunch of light bulbs as a ground row, literally with cardboard on battens. In the chandeliers, 90-watt spotlights just banged into the ceiling. This is all stuff that my gaffer did. And on the tables, because production design didn't have any lights, I went out to the hardware store where you get lamps. I took the lamps that you use on porches, I flipped them upside down, and I put a bulb in them. That's all we did. Oh, and then the colored light is from 1, 2, on both sides, there's 2 Par 64s, like regular old rock and roll par cans, lighting the scene. And I have to say it came out really well. Again, no money, no production design money, no time because this club was given to us like the day before, no time to pre-light and all that other stuff that goes with it. And there you go. I did this part here it's the coda to a film that Don Cheadle directed and Roberto Schaefer, ASC blah blah blah, did. It's a period film, and Roberto couldn't do the ending, and because the ending was made up, and what they wanted was something. It's a period film, but they wanted to bring Miles Davis, who's played by Don. It's actually a pretty good movie. Into the 21st century. And again, we have a club, toss, we got no money. We have a stage the size of this room. So what I did was literally bring one LED screen in and a couple of lights. And the material on the LED screen, I asked him to take the material from Miles Davis's drawings. I mean, you would believe that that's a huge haul. I asked him to take the material from Miles's drawings in his book and put them on the LED screen, and then just shot Don in silhouette. I have to say this was my favorite thing because all those guys are real jazz musicians. There's Ron Carter up there. This is like Wayne Shorter was up there. Herbie Hancock was up there. I was in heaven on that one. A small little movie with Elizabeth Shue and Abigail Breslin and Alessandra Devone. I think I had one gaffer and one key grip and me and a camera's crew assistant. And again, trying to make a visual that had some sort of impact with just using one light. That's just the blonde whacking into the lens. And just deciding that you don't need all the frills to get the feeling. As you can see, I am a firm believer in. I'll turn off a light in a second. Matching lights mean nothing to me. And the first time I learned that was I operated 3 movies for Sven Nykvist. And I remember it was pissing with rain one day. And we're outside shooting, then we go inside to the same house to shoot. And I go inside and it's like lights coming through the window. It's like gorgeously lit. And I was like, hey, Sven, it's just like supposed to be cold and rainy outside. And he literally said, Otas, does it look good? I go, yeah, it looks great. I said, okay. And that was his response to that. Because I don't believe, I think we can, particularly because we have the DI now, we can get too caught up in matching. Like it matches. But our worlds don't match. Our visual memory doesn't match. Emotional memory doesn't match. And if that's what if it works, it just works. Sven taught me a lot, actually, about the simplicity of doing something with just one light or one bounce or one card. He was an amazing cinematographer. This scene, I don't know if I should play this one. This was a Beyonce film. Yeah, it doesn't look great here. We should skip this. Looks great on my computer, but I'm not going to play this one. But again, this was all pretty much all practicals with one Chinese lantern. The blacks are all gone. It looks great down here. Here, wait, guys. Look how nice that looks. Do you want to watch it that way? Right? That's the problem when we shoot for that and we shoot for this. The reason I put that scene up there is that's lit literally with a mirror, reflecting sunlight into a room. Part of those choices that you have is like, where do I put the camera to make it work as simply and as elegantly as possible as an interesting frame? And you know, I literally stacked all those chairs up and try to get those chandeliers up there. And we lucked out on the mirror. But part of the thing is like, what do I have? What can I use? And my philosophy is, how can I do it simply? Chinese lantern and the kitchen lights was the kitchen light. This was shot on Kodak. No, this was Fuji. I used Fuji film on this because I really wanted the colors to pop, even though it was a period piece. Bunch of park cans lighting their thing, and a chimera lighting her. And outside is a big balloon light, a Chinese lantern, and a practical. Yeah, that actually looks better there. But soon as that block there, yeah. See, again, I wish you could see it on the computer, but part of the point is, it's the simplicity of the frame, it's the simplicity of the lighting and composition that makes certain things work, and not the complexity of lighting it. You know, I mean, we could have lit the hell out of that thing, but at the moment, and this was film, at the moment, one light with a wide shot, and then adding a fill light there on the close-up, I mean, again, I wish I had a bigger TV screen. This was a film. We stole this shot in the back of a stage, and I had every light, and all I did was put up these top hats and place the actors where they needed to be. Part of the reason why this works is there's negative fill on one side. There's, I believe, the right choice of lenses, even though they're overs. There's handheld camera, but steady handheld. And then the tag of the scene was a shot that does that drops down. And sometimes what we forget, and again I'm talking to the students here, is what we forget is everything has a purpose. Every shot tells a story. Every shot has a beginning and the end, and every shot has a place in the narrative. And it's designing those shots. That didn't come about in prep. That came about when I watched the rehearsal. And my camera operator and I watched the rehearsal and went, yeah, that's what we should do, you know? Okay. Can't imagine anybody has anything to say. Oh, we do. Yes, I like the way the directors hired different DPs because they come with an ethos, as you say, um, or you stick with one because it can change from script to script. I have people that I work with that I know that would be really great lighting and collaborating on this kind of thing versus that kind of thing. There's a wonderful, wonderful deep gaffer by the name of Jim Planette. If you ever heard of something called, I don't know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yeah, that guy, right? Huge, Alan Dalvio's guy. Huge lighting setups, huge. And I used to work with him when I was an operator way back. And I had to do some pickups for a scene in LA, and it was right during the pandemic. And I wanted to do it so simply. It was an interior, I don't think I have the clip because it wasn't about that. It was an interior cabin in a set with very little room between the outside of the wall and the outside of the set wall and the stage wall. And then, of course, in LA, we have fire lanes. So 6 feet are taken up by that. You can't put anything in a fire lane. So I wanted 20 Ks coming through the windows. And Planette and I, who are friendly, not friends, on day one, he almost quit on me because he didn't want to do it. And it was like, okay, you go home. I don't care. You know, you're the best boy. We'll put the 20 Ks there. So yes, that does happen. And then, interesting enough, after we did it, which is, it came out really well, and the director was pleased, although it was during the middle of the pandemic, and the director was in Mexico, so the director was directing by Zoom, and he had a little monitor, and I would take my monitor, his monitor, and I would push him over to an actor so they could talk. It was like a little robot. It was hilarious and terrible at the same time. But it made for fun for me because it was like what I kept on getting. So what do you want to do next, Toss? Because, somebody else is in Mexico. So next I want to do this. But the point of all that being is, yes, I do find people that I like for specific projects, and then other people who can go both ways, and other people who are amazing at the big stuff, big, huge night exteriors. You give them the sense of, this is what I want it to look like. And then you go, ciao, bye. And you come back and you go, oh, okay, just dim it down a bit. We're good, So, yeah. Anything else? Oh, wait, wrong button. Oh, right button. Can we kill that top light? Mona Lisa Smile, huge movie. Can Can we kill that light? Not that oh, maybe it helps the blocks. I don't know. Mona Lisa's Smile at the time was $100 million back in 2004. All this is available light through softening material, and the stuff by the painting, which this turned into the poster, was 3 Chinese lanterns up on top with photoflood bulbs in them, like daylight photoflood at 47K. Those things. So it was kind of interesting to work with actors who are high-powered, and you come in there and they go, I'll never forget, Gwyneth Paltrow said to Philippe, "Is this how you're lighting it?" This is a favorite scene because I pitched this roundy round scene, and then I couldn't figure out how to light it. And there's one Chinese lantern on the top, where you can see the reflection there, and there's one on the bottom, and I was so worried it was going to be flat. So I said, oh, let's start flat, and then we'll end up with some texture to it. That was just the light that was already there on that one. Just grab that scene. This one here, I kind of like this one because this was literally lit by the sun. We turned off the lights. Jane Muskie gave me those orangey kind of things, and I lit her with a slide. I just lit the slide projector, and I asked Julia to step on a mark to do that, you know? And, oh, go. I think, as we were saying yesterday, that the reason we do what we do is you like actors. And if you like actors, then you want them to feel comfortable. And if you want them to feel comfortable, they have to be feeling comfortable about themselves in the character. So certain actresses, and I would say Julia, Beyonce, I mean a certain Julianne Moore, I did in a very high-powered, she had to look great kind of movie, and then I did one where she played a drug addict. Literally did those 2 movies back to back, and she literally came to me and she said, "I look great in the last movie. You're not going to do that again, are you?" And I said, absolutely. Wait. You want to be able to see me, I guess. I'll go over here. So yes, at times it can be difficult. There's certain actresses that are difficult, Sandra Bullock, et cetera, that will actually, wait, those words did not come out of my mouth, will actually look to see how high the light is, you know, and where it is. Difficulty, I would say, was Man on the Moon with Courtney Love. I had worked with her on People vs. Larry Flint, and she had I'm not telling stories, she had a substance abuse problem. So A, she was very insecure to start with. B, she was just coming out of substance abuse, so she looked terrible. So Philippe lit her a certain way. And then when I got her on Man on the Moon, which was my first movie, I also continued that because it gave her the confidence to, you know, do what you do. So I think those are kind of like judgment choices as you go. You know, but yeah, we could tell stories later, right? Between anybody else? Yes. Okay, so the way I like my process is, we talked about prep with Larry, and you know the beauty of shot decking and trying to be as prepared as possible. When I prepped, for example, Man on the Moon, which was a huge movie with a huge actor, I went to Milos's home, Milos Forman, a huge director. And it was 3 in the afternoon. I sat down, I pulled out my script, and he pulled out a bottle of 68 Petrus. And we promptly drank that, and we talked about family, and then went home. And I was stunned that Milos and I never spoke about the script at all. So that's his process. My process during that was going with Patricia von Brandestein, who's a phenomenal production designer. And I was the newbie. I was the camera operator. I was the young guy. I was like, you know, what is he doing shooting this movie guy? And, you know, try to prep as much as I can to the point of literally putting marks on the floor where my Chinese lanterns were going to go. The reason that worked for me then is because Jim Carrey was day one. I told the story the other day about like me being late for day one. So after we did that scene, I was late for day one. We break for lunch. Jim won't come back inside the studio until we all stand in front of an ice cream truck, right, and sing him a song. The entire crew, and there was probably 80 of us on that stage. We get done with that. He jumps in his car. He drives it right up to Danny DeVito, was in the movie and producing for Jersey Films, right up to Danny's door of his trailer, locks Danny in the trailer, jumps in a different car, and goes home to Malibu. That was the tail end of day one. So we just called, that's it. That was lunch, go home. From then on, he was 6 hours late every day. And we went from a 62-day schedule to an 84-day schedule. So the pressures were enormous. For a new DP, I was going to be fired every morning. Is how, you know. So yeah, so I was marking things on the floor and trying to figure out what's going on and lighting as simply as possible. And Milos always wanted crisscross because he likes it editorially. When two people are talking, you have opposing cameras, and how do you make it not flat and blah blah blah. Normally, that's an abnormal film. The process normally for me is after all the prep is done, I go in with the room with just the director and possibly scripty and just watch. And sometimes I ask the director to stand in a certain spot because actors will always play to the director. So if the director gets comfortable in the wrong spot, then you're fucked. You know, because all of a sudden it's like your plans went out the window. So often I would, before we go in, I said, I got a box for you to sit on right over there, you know, and then Milos was the type of guy who would just say, show me to the actors. Other directors, you know, actually direct them, say, no, I want you here and there. So, but I'm always there for the rehearsal. If not for the first one, I always have a private rehearsal with the actors and the director and myself only. Because things could fly out the window. And you have to have a plan. When they do fly out and they ask for the rest of the crew to come in, you have to be thinking at that point really, really hard. Yeah? That's it? Moving on? Look, almost at the end, guys. The end isn't near. Clip 6. Who knows what that is? Oh, it's going. This is kind of a fun thing that I did, and it's all with color. You know, sometimes you just go in there and you turn some practicals on. I went out to the hardware store once again and bought colored bulbs, and I just stuck them in various places. So I lit this with hardware store colored bulbs and 2 Astera tubes. There was a fountain in the background in a pool, and I took a Joe Lico, and I whacked it for that shot. And again, white walls, night, neo-noir stuff. One light on this, which is a little, I think it was like an inky with a flag. Again, it doesn't have to be complicated to be effective at all. It doesn't have to be. This one, it can be big. All I did was put those bulbs were double 85, full CTO. The other ones I couldn't reach, so I let them go green. And that became the motif, you know? So once I knew that was the motif, that's me inside looking at a monitor in the bottom left. Then this was shot on film. This was not Fuji. This was Kodak. Again, it was the absence of light that makes all this stuff work. A Chinese lantern, which I didn't quite flag off enough on this thing. Those switches are in the wrong position. Never reset them. I just noticed that. A light bulb and some cat food to make the cat go where it was. It actually has more detail in the blacks, but not much. Not much at all. And sometimes you just play with what you have, and it can become effective. Diane Lane was a kind of actress who had done a lot of romantic comedies and whatnot. And God, this one here is way too crunchy. Can we take the projector and put it to, if it's at 12, can you go to 16 for us, please, and thank you? 16. Yeah, for this one. We're trying to figure out how to make this projector do what it needs to do. So, Seamus, Peter had it down to 11. I went to 12 and a half. It normally lives at 16. We'll figure out if it gets any brighter, if it breathes into the blacks at all. I don't know if that button does anything, God's honest truth. It takes a minute, and we don't see anything change. All right, so the story behind this one is all of a sudden an actor fell out. We had to go to a different location. We were shooting downstairs in a bar scene, and we were supposed to go somewhere else, and we had already scouted a location to do this particular scene. We lost the actor, whatever it was, and okay, Tass, there's an upstairs. Can you make that work? Oh, look, it actually gets into black when the doors are open. I do that often, talking about black and doors open, is, one of the tricks is, instead of using fill, is to make sure your lens gets whacked with something. So many shots I have done is just lit with the flare from a lens. And Panavision and many companies come up with all sorts of flashers for that, which I find way too technical. Sometimes it's just a flashlight and whack it in there or put it on a little magic arm. Do it. But anyway, so while I'm downstairs, I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So this was shot, part of Guillermo's thing. So this was shot 2 years ago in pandemic. I remembered the color of the shades that I used on Mona Lisa Smile, that Jane Muskie had given me those sort of shades. And I thought, oh, let's do that. So while I was shooting, the grips took 85. It was a sunny day, and they cut it and just stuck it on the shade. And at first they stuck it on the window, and I didn't want it on the window. I wanted it on the shade itself for a particular reason, because I wanted the white light to come. So that window on the left only has one layer, and the window on the upstage side, those have 2 layers. And I wanted that white line of white light to come through. Again, it was coming up like, how do you make an image work in really, really simply in no amount of time? That was a dead hog. We had a cockroach wrangler, and the scene came out quite effectively for like a neo-noir, pull it out of nowhere, because the location went away, and we still had to keep on shooting because producers will not let you go home. They make you do stuff. So, again, just to reiterate, that's my honey. She's texting me. It looks way better there because, obviously the blacks are crunchy and they're exhausted and all that sort of stuff. But it is what it is. Part of the thing about being simple is also being really clear about camera movement, but that's a whole other discussion. Any questions? Are we bored? Oh, you have a question? Wait till you see this clip. It's contractual. It's in my contract. My contract says I have to color grade. I make decisions while I'm shooting as to what I can get away with in post. But I always try and have the negative looking what I want it to be. Often, though, and we spoke about this, relationships between editors and DPs, and temp love and all the other stuff that goes with it. So on the last thing I color graded, which was in March because we've been on strike, day one the editor was in the DI suite, and I kindly asked the director to kick him out. And I said, no, this is my time contractually. He's more than welcome to come next week, but I was never invited to the editorial. Never invited. So, very kindly, I would rather not have somebody in the room while I go through my process. And I did it as politely and nicely as I could. And of course, some umbrage, he was like pissed off about it, but you know, that's his problem. Because quite honestly, a collaboration only works when it's two ways. You know, that's the whole idea of collaborative art, is that it works. And I'm welcome in the DI to ideas and opinions, but not from day one. I got to go through my process, and then I get to show it to a director, and then from there, if the director wants to bring the editor in. But invariably, in my mind, the editor gets no vote. They get an opinion, but not a vote. You know, so. Oh, any Americans in here? I'm sure there. Yeah. Well, normally I work with the same grader. I try to work with the same grader, depending on where I am in the world. And the process is whether or not, if it's digital, whether or not we went through LUTs to start with. And so if we have, I always liked, like anything, I like, okay, so Harbor has Joe Gawler, who's creme de la creme, and I've known him since he was, oh my God, before he was married, so 27 years now. Before he owned Harbor, he was working at Technicolor. I like anything anybody likes. I like it when a camera operator comes to me and says, hey, why don't we do this? You know, I said, show me. I like it when the grader has had a chance to pass at it. And normally they do, because normally my grading is normally 40 hours for a normal feature. So it's, you know, it's 80 hours. 2 5-day weeks, because you can't do it much past 8 hours a day. So normally when I hit there, it's already got some sort of grade on it. And then Joe and I talk about it, and then we figure it out, and you know, we could have been going south one direction, or editorially, because I always look at it before, you know, what the rough cut was, or the final cut. Like maybe decisions were made because scenes shift. You were talking about that the other day, where all of a sudden you're going, what is that doing there? Right? I mean, it's like, I thought we were supposed to be blue and green and yellow here. What the fuck happened? You know, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, we just go through it. And so then week 2, we invite the director in, you know, to get feedback. Some directors like to stay, but it's an incredibly boring process. You know, so normally it's just notes. I hate it darker. I want to see it. Or we like the directors go darker, darker, darker. And then we change it. And we all go, yeah, 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 yeah. And actually, nothing happened. He goes, oh, yeah, much better. So happens all the time. Yeah, that happens all the time. But part of this whole little talk I wanted to give was the reliance on technology. We were saying before, like the Chinese lantern, that came about because Philippe was looking at something in the still world. The Chimera came about because Jordan Cronenworth wanted something to soften his 1Ks, and it wasn't just a frame. He wanted it to be further deeper and wider, and various kinds of grids to put on it, and different gels in front of it, and quickly. Way back when I was a Steadicam operator, I was on all sorts of films, and this was way before the Technocrane was invented, and I was working on a film. Oh, I knew I was going to be working on a film that Haskell Wexler was going to shoot, and Norman Jewison was the director. And it was a pretty high power, high profile thing. And Haskell and I had been talking about a shot that there wasn't the technology available to do that. I was like, how the hell do we do that? So that summer I was up in Maine teaching Steadicam, and I thought about it, and I thought, oh man, we had a Lumicrane, but it wasn't going to do what we wanted to do. So we came up with this. Thank you. That was my choice. We can turn on the house lights when we have a chance. But, you know, limitation, the whole point of it is limitation sparks creativity. And I did that shot on a movie called Other People's Money. And it was Danny DeVito, and it was, I swear to God, Gregory Peck. How cool was that? I worked with Gregory Peck. Oh my God, that's how old I am. And when Norman and Haskell, I mean, I was pitching the shot, and Haskell was looking at me sideways, and I had the grip department build me one of those, and we did the shot because it was an office thing, and you had to go around and come around and go around a thing and do that, and you know, Haskell was the kind of DP where we were doing a scene, and like it's like Danny doing something, and Norman goes, so it's the close-up, right? It's the close-up, and Haskell, yeah, it's a close-up. So Norman would go because Norman would like to have his 4 o'clock drink at normally like noon. So he would go, and let's say the stand-in's sitting here, right? And it's like, okay, I'm setting up a close-up, and Haskell would look at me and go, no, why don't we start here and go like this? And sure enough, we would do this amazing complicated shot, ending up in a close-up, and you know, Norman would rightfully lose his mind. But Haskell was, you know, I mean, Haskell like 3 statues, right? So he knew what he was doing. But so when I pitched him this thing to get, I think it was Gregory Peck coming down out of an office, he was totally in his you know, in his realm. And what I did was instead of that platform over there, it was a factory floor, and I had a forklift with a pallet. So I had guys carrying me, then step off onto this pallet, lean it back against the forklift. The forklift brought me down, and then I kept on going. And so then when I spun around, all I saw was a forklift. So yeah, we didn't have a technocrane, so we did it that way. Any questions? Go. Wait, I'm sorry. Gentleman in the front first, and then. Go ahead.
No, I had no question.
Yeah, we can't hear.
Right, on a crane we do that all the time. The first time that was done with the Steadicam was on Bountiful Glory. You know, when Garrett himself stepped off of a moving Titan crane and he did that shot. Part of the question is, what if the crane doesn't fit in there? What if it makes a move that the crane doesn't fit because you need a crane, and that's why the Technocrane is so interesting. It can only retract on track. So your geometry is totally connected in a linear fashion, right? It's the length of track that makes it go back. That gag had me interior, and I could go anywhere I wanted. And so that's the sort of difference between the classic crane shot with a guy stepping off or stepping on or whatever.
What is your limit? What's the moment where you say, listen, this is not going to be achievable with the money I have? And, you know.
The script. So you do this long enough, you read a script, and, you know, I go, what do they got? And it's not only what do they got from me, It's what do they got from my crew, like who am I bringing, and what is the, once I understand that, then when I go meet with a director, I listen to what their expectations are, and then I make a decision, I am going to do this movie or not. Because sometimes they're so far apart that I don't even want to have that fight. You know, I want that director, I want her on my side. I want to be giving her vision out. And if I don't think I can do it, even with all the little tricks and the Chinese lanterns, like, we can do it this way, and I don't give that pitch, and she goes, that's not what I wanted. I go, well, you got the wrong guy, or get a different guy, or you know, go get more money, or. So I think that's basically when I do it. Way back before I get the job. I never take a job where I'm surprised, you know, at what they have, because that's a terrible situation. The fear of losing my job. That's always a good one. There's no way, and I don't know very many DPs in here, would say to a director, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. That cannot be done. Those words are just not in our lexicon. We're here to figure it out. So my approach to that kind of thing is always, sometimes I pitch something which I don't know how to do, but somehow subconsciously know I'll figure it out, you know? But I'll pitch an alternative. Oh, you want to do that? And I know we can't do that. We can't get a 75-foot technocrane in this space, you know? I go, well, how about this? How about we get the cable? And I mean, I've done shots where I literally have attached a cable, right, in an interior, a piece of wood, okay, imagine a piece of wood 2 meters long, a fixed camera on one end, okay, so now it's hanging down, piece of wood on a cable, on the back side of the piece of wood, opposite side that the camera's pointing, a perpendicular other piece of wood, 1 meter long, but literally perpendicular, 2 batteries, balancing totally straight, totally out, and a thread. And you attach the cable from one point to another, and it just hangs there in balance, and then you attach it with a thread, and then you burn the thread with a lighter, and the thing just takes off and soars. And it'll soar across a football field, it'll soar across 2 cranes, you can put it up anywhere. Is that a Skycam? I was one of the original designers of the Skycam. Is that the Skycam? No. The Skycam costs now probably $75,000 a day. That I can make, and use it to great effect in a couple movies, because I couldn't figure out where to put the other thing, like, you know, shooting down an alley. So you become creative and go, what do I got? Or pitch it to a key grip, who saves you more often than not, you know? So, anything else? Sir.
Yeah, thanks. That was very informative. I think as a student, what I've kind of struggled with is night exterior whites. Just getting large soft sources, and I've been trying to figure out what can I do to get like essentially a moonbox. So if you have any kind of, have you kind of experienced any kind of similar situation where, you know, what's the closest I can get to getting like a giant, like a large source in the night for a wide shot?
It really depends on where it is. We kind of touched on this a little bit when we were talking about driving shots and whatnot in the night, and condors and cranes. When you read the script, you have to be able to choose locations that you have the financial resources for, which means that I have lit streets, the big plazas, literally with a cable and 100 of those things hanging off of it. Flap it in the night. You know why? Because we were talking yesterday about balloons. You want a balloon. Well, these days, to fill a 2-meter balloon these days is well over $4,000, you know, for one night. And then let's say you got to use it 3 nights. So all that stuff that you just did, the production manager is looking at $4,000 go in the atmosphere because you need another tank tomorrow and another tank. So all of a sudden, $12,000 later, right now, there's movies that we can do that on, you know, and we do, sometimes 6 balloons. But the price of helium has gone. So what else do we got? These days, LED ribbons. Did a scene on a street. Like I said, the cheapest way I've ever found is those, because those are just lanterns. Again, if it's just a bulb and it's far enough away, then it becomes a source. Because if you have a bulb every meter, like carnival lights, yes, a 200-watt bulb every meter. Yes, the gaffer is going to yell about the power and the cable not being able to hold it. I'm going, well, we'll turn it off. It'll cool off in between takes. You know, leave me alone. It's going to be fine. But, you know, that'll be the same effect. You know, 200-watt bulbs is a soft source when it's far away. It's who was talking about the twinkle lights, all lollipop, that, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, like I always hear, here, sit there. Nice chair. And if you don't think that works, and if you don't think they catch on, because they do, you know, but they understand, because I said I'll do that. Why? Because if the director's over there, then everybody's going to do this and play to that, you know, when they just start rehearsing. And if the director is over there, then an actor will normally, you know, sit down and do this as they talk to somebody on a 2-shot. It's just the way human nature is, you know, that's it. Very few actors don't play to an audience. They don't play to a camera, but you don't have the camera in the room. So the director is the camera, so stick him or her where you want them. Oh yeah, for sure, because they're on the same page. We've already, when I scout alone with my director. You know, she and I sit in a room for 2 hours. We pretend we're the actors. We talk this dialogue. We go, huh, yeah, oh, God, Julia will never do that. God, I mean, what a pain in the ass so-and-so is. He's always going to go to that door, always. You know, well, how do we stop him from going to the door? Put the table over there. Oh, yeah, put the table between the door and the thing. So it's too many steps for the dialogue, because actors will walk in cadence of what they speak. So every time you do that, when you're lighting, you have to know that, because sometimes you say, oh, we'll just block it with the stand-ins. And you go, well, by week 2, you kind of know what that actor's cadence is, or if it's their stand-in, like Robin Williams and a bunch of guys had their own people. Robin had a great guy. Robin's guy was so good. I did like 3 movies with Robin. That when we got tired, we would say, John, wind him up. And sure enough, John would say one thing, and then Robin Williams would then all of a sudden become Robin Williams. And for 20 minutes, we would be laughing and joking. Yeah. And Robin, I don't think, ever knew that we knew how to do that. So, you know, we got tired. We used to wind him up. But yeah, that's part of it. Part of it is knowing and loving actors and knowing drama and understanding what they need and how much freedom they need. And, you know, Sam's really good. He'll do that lean for you. But other people will go, I don't lean that way. You think, oh, okay. Well, I'll figure something else out. Yeah. No, I don't. I don't have a genre. I strive very hard not to have a genre, which pissed off my agent to no end. And the reason is I get bored. I've done horror films, thrillers, romantic comedies. They all have something to offer the human spirit. And they all are interesting to photograph. The difficulty I find is that when I work, I'm emotionally invested in these images I produce. You couldn't quite tell on this screen, but some of them are very dark stories indeed. And you carry that darkness with you. I don't know how actors do it, but I carry that darkness with me. And when you carry it for 12 or 14 weeks, I was an operator, and I turned down the movie Seven. And literally, David Fincher called me, and Darius called me on the phone asking me twice to do that movie for them. I was a hot operator. I had just finished back-to-back Interview with a Vampire and Mary Riley. And I just come home to a new baby. And I did not want, and I got to the end of that script, and Gwyneth Paltrow's head was in the box. And I turned to my honey at the time, I was like, it's Gwen. I had worked with Gwenny. It's Gwenny's head is in the box. And I just couldn't do it, And to this day, I saw Darius the other day in New York because he was timing something. And we don't, it's interesting being a cinematographer because you admire and like fellow cinematographers, but it's only in festivals and in clubhouses that we get to talk to people that we admire. So I brought that story up to Darius, and he remembered it very clearly because very few people turned his ass down, including Fincher. But I just couldn't do it, I just couldn't. So I went off to do something fun and sweet. I forget what it was. A forgettable, fun, sweet movie that people were falling in love, and and there was hope in the air. And we're gonna close this on that note. Love and hope and be kind. That's it, guys. Any more questions before I get out of here? Great. Thanks for showing up. All right.